Harry Dresden stood on the cold, empty platform of King's Cross Station, his breath visible in the early morning air. The world around him was still and quiet, but his heart pounded with a mix of excitement and fear. Clutched in his hand was the letter that had brought him here, delivered by a spectral raven in the dead of night. A letter that spoke of magic, of a hidden world, and of a school called the Arcanum Academy. But now that he was here, doubts began to creep into his mind. Was this all some elaborate joke? A trick played by someone with too much time on their hands? He glanced around, half expecting to see someone jump out from behind a pillar, laughing at the gullible boy who had believed in magic. But there was no one. The station was eerily empty, and the only sound was the distant rumble of a train somewhere far down the tracks. Platform 13, Thor? Harry muttered to himself, scanning the signs. Platform 13, platform 14, but nothing in between. His grip on the letter tightened as he walked slowly down the length of the platform, searching for any sign of the hidden platform mentioned in the letter. As he passed a brick wall near the end of the platform, he felt a strange pull, a tingling sensation in the air. Harry paused, glancing around nervously. The wall seemed different, almost as if it was calling out to him. He took a deep breath and reached out with one hand, half expecting his fingers to meet solid stone. Instead, his hand passed through the wall as if it wasn't there at all. Harry gasped, stumbling back in shock. The wall shimmered slightly, revealing the faint outline of an archway, an entrance that had been hidden from plain sight. Trembling with anticipation, Harry stepped forward again, this time walking straight through the wall as if it were made of mist. On the other side, he found himself standing on a small, secluded platform, bathed in a soft, silvery light. The number above the archway read 13 through Thors, and before him stood a magnificent train, its sleek black carriages gleaming in the moonlight. The engine hissed and steamed, glowing runes etched into its metal surface pulsing with a faint blue light. "This is real," Harry whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of the train. His heart raced as he took in the sight before him. The Arcanum Express, the letter had called it, a train that would take him to a place where magic was real, where he might finally belong. Gathering his courage, Harry approached the train. The door to one of the carriages slid open with a soft hiss, and he hesitated only for a moment before stepping inside. The interior of the Arcanum Express was unlike anything Harry had ever seen. The walls were lined with dark wood paneling, inlaid with shimmering silver patterns that seemed to shift and change as he walked past. The floor was carpeted in deep crimson, and the air was filled with a spicy scent that reminded him of old books and mysterious potions. But it wasn't just the decor that caught Harry's attention. It was the passengers. As he walked down the corridor, he couldn't help but stare at the strange and wondrous beings seated in the compartments. There were creatures with horns and wings, beings draped in robes that shimmered with the colors of the rainbow, and even a tall, thin man with skin that seemed to be made of living shadow. Harry passed by a compartment where a group of goblins were playing cards with a troll, their deep voices rumbling through the air. "First time, eh?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. Harry turned to see a young girl about his age, with short-cropped hair dyed an electric blue and eyes that seemed to glow with an inner light. She leaned casually against the doorframe of one of the compartments, a playful grin on her face. Yeah," Harry admitted, feeling slightly overwhelmed. "Is it that obvious?" The girl laughed, a musical sound that seemed to echo in the narrow corridor. "Just a bit. Name's Lyra, by the way, Lyra Silverwind." "Harry Dresden," he replied, extending a hand awkwardly. Lyra took it with a firm grip, her eyes studying him intently. "You're a new one, aren't you?" she said, more a statement than a question. "I don't recognize your face. Must be your first year at Arcanum." Harry nodded, unsure of what to say. "I didn't even know any of this existed until yesterday." Lyra's grin widened. "Lucky you. Most of us have known about the Academy for years, usually because our families are part of the magical world. But there are always a few like you, those who come from the outside, the ones who didn't know they had magic in their blood." "Magic," Harry repeated, the words still feeling foreign on his tongue. "So it's all real then? The Academy, magic, all of it?" Lyra's expression softened, and she nodded. Yeah, it's real, and it's amazing, but it can be dangerous too. The Arcanum Academy isn't just a school. It's a place where you'll learn to control the power inside you, to harness it for good, or, well, some choose other paths. The way she said it made Harry's stomach churn. Other paths? Let's just say not everyone who attends Arcanum is on the side of the light, Lyra said cryptically, her eyes darkening for a moment before she brightened again. But don't worry, you'll figure it out. Everyone does. Come on, I'll show you to your compartment. The ride's long and you'll want to get some rest. Harry followed Lyra down the corridor, passing more strange and fantastical creatures along the way. Finally, she stopped in front of a door with a small brass plaque that read H. Dresden. "This is you," Lyra said with a wink. "Get settled in, and if you need anything, just come find me. My compartment's a few doors down." "Thanks, Lyra," Harry said, genuinely grateful for her help. She nodded and disappeared down the corridor, leaving Harry alone in front of his door. He hesitated for a moment before opening it. Inside, he found a cozy, well-furnished compartment with a plush bed, a small writing desk, and a window that looked out onto the rapidly passing landscape. A large trunk sat at the foot of the bed, with his name engraved on a brass plate. How it had gotten there, he had no idea, but he was too tired and too overwhelmed to question it. Harry sat down on the bed, his mind racing with everything he had seen and heard. It was all so much to take in. The hidden platform, the magical train, the strange passengers, and the academy that awaited him at the end of this journey. He glanced out the window, watching as the landscape changed from the familiar cityscape of London to a wild, untamed wilderness, where the trees seemed to glow with an ethereal light and strange creatures roamed freely. The scenery outside grew more surreal with each passing minute. Harry caught glimpses of towering mountains that seemed to touch the stars, rivers of molten silver, and forests where the trees were made of crystal. Every now and then, he thought he saw figures moving in the shadows, giant serpents slithering through the underbrush, winged creatures soaring through the sky, and other, stranger beings that defied description. As the train raced on, the sense of wonder and excitement in Harry's chest grew stronger, but so did the unease. This world was so different from anything he had ever known, so full of danger and mystery. But it was also a world where he might finally find a place to belong, where he could learn who he truly was. Harry leaned back against the pillows, exhaustion beginning to creep in. His eyelids grew heavy, and before he knew it, he had drifted off to sleep. A sudden jolt woke Harry with a start. He sat up, blinking in confusion as the train shuddered and the lights flickered. Outside the window, the once vibrant landscape had darkened, the glowing trees and silver rivers replaced by a dense, swirling mist that clung to the ground like a living thing. The air inside the compartment felt colder, and a sense of foreboding filled the room. "What's happening?" Harry whispered to himself, rubbing his eyes as he tried to shake off the lingering traces of sleep. Another jolt shook the train, more violent this time, and Harry was thrown against the side of the compartment. He scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest as the train continued to lurch and sway. The mist outside thickened, wrapping around the train like a shroud, obscuring everything beyond the window. Suddenly, the door to his compartment flew open and Lyra burst in, her expression grim. "Harry, you need to come with me, now! What's going on?" Harry asked, panic rising in his throat as he followed her out into the corridor. "The train's been attacked," Lyra said, her voice tense. "We've crossed into a dangerous part of the journey, the Veil of Shadows. There are creatures that dwell in the mist, and they've found us." "Creatures?" Harry echoed, his mind racing. "What kind of creatures?" Lyra didn't answer immediately, her eyes scanning the corridor as she led him toward the front of the train. "The kind that feed on fear and magic. They're drawn to the power of the Arcanum Express, and they'll do anything to get inside." As if on cue, a loud screech echoed through the train, followed by the sound of something heavy slamming against the side of the carriage. Harry flinched, his pulse racing. "What do we do?" "Fight," Lyra said simply, her eyes hardening. "We have to protect the train and everyone on board." They reached the front of the train, where several older students were already gathered, their faces set with determination. Harry recognized a few of them from the brief glimpses he had caught earlier. students with an aura of confidence and power that marked them as more experienced mages. "Lyra, you brought the new kid?" One of the older students, a tall boy with dark hair and sharp features, glanced at Harry with a raised eyebrow. "He's got to learn sometime, doesn't he?" Lyra shot back, her tone challenging. "Besides, we need all the help we can get." The boy snorted but didn't argue, turning his attention back to the window. Harry followed his gaze and felt his blood run cold. Outside, in the swirling mist, dark shapes moved, twisted, monstrous figures with glowing eyes and sharp, clawed limbs. They clawed at the sides of the train, trying to force their way inside. One of the older students stepped forward, raising a hand. With a whispered incantation, a bright blue shield of light erupted from his palm, spreading out to cover the entire side of the train. The creatures recoiled, hissing and shrieking as the light burned their shadowy forms. But the shield flickered, the blue light dimming as the creatures pressed harder against it. Harry could see the strain on the older student's face as he struggled to maintain the barrier. "We need to strengthen the shield," Lyra shouted, already moving to stand beside the boy. She raised her hands, and a second layer of light joined the first, merging with the shield and bolstering its strength. The other students followed suit, adding their own magic to the shield. Harry watched in awe as the combined power of the students formed a barrier so strong that the creatures were momentarily driven back, their shrieks of anger echoing through the night. But it wasn't enough. The creatures regrouped, their numbers growing as more emerged from the mist, drawn by the magic of the train. They attacked the shield with renewed ferocity, their claws and fangs tearing at the light with a relentless hunger. Harry felt a surge of panic. What could he do? He was just a boy, a novice with no training or experience in magic. But as he watched the older students struggle to maintain the shield, something stirred inside him, a deep, primal instinct that urged him to fight, to protect. Without thinking, Harry stepped forward, raising his hands as he had seen the others do. He closed his eyes, searching for the power within himself. The magic that the letter had promised was there. At first, there was nothing, only fear and doubt. But then he felt it, a flicker of warmth in his chest, a spark of energy that grew stronger with each passing second. He focused on that spark, willing it to grow, to fill him with the strength he needed. The warmth spread through his body, filling his veins with a tingling sensation that made his hair stand on end. And then, with a sudden burst of clarity, he released the energy, letting it flow through his hands and into the shield. A surge of bright red light erupted from his palms, merging with the blue and silver of the other students' magic. The shield flared, glowing with a brilliant intensity that pushed the creatures back once more. The dark shapes writhed and twisted, unable to break through the barrier. Harry opened his eyes, gasping for breath as the last of his energy drained away. He felt weak, his legs trembling beneath him, but the sight of the creatures retreating into the mist filled him with a fierce sense of accomplishment. "You did it, Harry," Lyra said, her voice filled with awe as she turned to him. "You actually did it." Harry could hardly believe it himself. He had tapped into his magic, had helped to protect the train and everyone on board. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. The older students relaxed as the creatures disappeared, the tension in the air easing. The shield slowly dissipated, the light fading away as the train continued on its journey through the mist. Harry leaned against the wall, his heart still pounding as the reality of what had just happened sank in. He had faced his first real challenge, had fought alongside other mages to protect something precious, and he had succeeded. But as the train sped on through the night, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The world he had entered was filled with danger and darkness, with forces that he could barely comprehend. And yet he felt a strange excitement, a thrill at the thought of what lay ahead. For the first time in his life, Harry Dresden felt truly alive.